So today we're going to be looking at Sonnet 116. And Sonnet 116 is written by William Shakespeare. And the first thing we want to do whenever we're looking at a sonnet is we want to go through and we want to label rhyme scheme. So let's go through and do that because it's going to help us to look at the structure of the poem. So the first line is always A. Always in rhyme scheme. Then go to the next line. Love does not rhyme with minds, so that's going to be B. Finds and minds rhymes, so that's going to be A. Remove and love. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking those don't rhyme, but they do. That's you can look at it two ways. It can either be considered approximate rhyme, or it was probably exact rhyme whenever it was written because it has that OVE sound, if you look at it. And the vowel sounds have changed over the past several hundred years. So I'm sure when it was written, it probably was a little closer. So let's go to the next one that doesn't rhyme, so that's going to be C. Then shaken doesn't rhyme with anything, so that's going to be D. Bark, mark rhymes, so that's going to be C. Taken, shaken, so that's going to be D. All right. So let's go to cheeks. That doesn't rhyme with anything, so that's going to be E. Calm does not rhyme with anything, so that's going to be F. Weeks and cheeks rhymes, so that's going to be E. Doom and calm, and same thing as up here. You're thinking those don't rhyme, but they do. It's just that O sound is a little bit different. And then the last two, proved and loved, those are also getting the same thing. All right, so with that, I want to go through and let's mark off the quatrains and the couplet. So if we mark off the quatrains and the couplet here, you've got A, B, A, B. Then you've got C, D, C, D. E, F, E, F. And then G, G. So you've got quatrain number 1, quatrain number 2, quatrain number 3, and a couplet at the end. All right, so as we start to look at this, you're going to see the reason that we label rhyme scheme, the reason that we divide it into quatrains and a couplet, because each quatrain kind of develops a type, it develops something, whether it be some metaphors that give a message, or it can be a little bit of a difference in the topic that's talked about. So that's why it's important to be able to label the rhyme scheme. So to break down quatrain number 1, I've given you a few notes already. But what I want to do is I want to point out a few things and talk about what we're looking at. All right, so first off, you'll notice that the first punctuation is right here with the period. And whenever we read poetry, I want you to read all the way to punctuation. Do not stop at the end of every line. So let's read the first sentence. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Now, the marriage of true minds right here is true love. All right, so let me not to true love. So, or I should not. And then we're going to look at this next thing, admit impediments. So when it says admit impediments, the word admit has a couple of different meanings, but the way it's being used here is to allow. So like if you come into school and they give you an admit slip, that allows you into class. And an impediment can be some type of problem that hinders you from something. So if we were to take this first sentence, he says, I should not allow problems in true love. All right, so true love should not allow problems to change it. All right, so this next part, he says, love is not love which alters when it alteration finds. So alter means to change. So if you alter the hem of pants, you're changing the length of the pants, right? So if you alter, you're changing. So what he's saying here is that it's not true love if it changes when it alteration finds. So what alteration finds means is it's that true love does not change when life changes. Let me give you an example of that. All right, so you're seniors. You're getting ready to go off to college or go find a job. Life is about to change in a few months. So let's say you're in love and you found the one. If it's true love, it's not going to change when life changes. Okay? Because he says that true love does not change when it alteration finds. So it doesn't change whenever life changes. All right, then the last part here, right here, or bends with a remover to remove. And that's just saying it's not removed, it's not bent. All right, so let's summarize what he's saying in the first quatrain. He's just saying that true love should not allow problems, should not allow anything to hinder it. And it's not true love if it changes when life changes. It's not going to remove itself. All right, so what are some key words in that first quatrain? Change and love, right? And then what is he? And then you have to keep in mind that he's not saying that love changes. He keeps using the word not. Not. All right? All right, so let's look at quatrain number 2. And we're going to look again by punctuation. So he says, oh no. And then this next part starts a sentence. When he says it, he's talking about love. And not just love, but true love. True love is an ever fixed mark. And you can see that I've given you this note right here. A mark is a sea mark. And a sea mark is something that's either on land or near land that helps guide sailors in. So a man-made sea mark is something like a lighthouse, okay? So if something is ever fixed, what does ever fixed mean? It means that it's there forever. It's fixed there forever. It's permanent. So he says love is a permanent sea mark that looks on tempest. And a tempest is a strong storm. So, what do you think a strong storm would represent in a poem? Let's think figuratively. A strong storm could be problems. All right? So, that love is a permanent sea mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. So, whenever he says tempest, we can kind of get that he's talking about problems. But also, whenever he says it is an ever-fixed mark, this is a metaphor. All right, so it's great if you can find metaphors, but what I really want you to be able to do is for you to be able to explain a metaphor to me. All right, so love is a sea mark. There's your metaphor. But what are we getting from love is a sea mark? Let's think about the purpose of a sea mark. A sea mark serves as a guide, right? So a sea mark serves as a guide to guide sailors in. And then he also says that it is permanent and it can face any problems, so it will not be destroyed. Okay, so it will not be destroyed. So what we're getting from the first 2 lines of this quatrain is that by comparing love to this permanent sea mark that can go through any storm and not be destroyed, he's trying to tell us that true love is going to serve as a guide. And it can go through any problems in life and not be destroyed. So now let's look at the second metaphor. So this is the first metaphor in this quatrain. This is the second metaphor in this quatrain. And here's your metaphor. It is the star. So love, because we said that it is love, and he says is the star. Now, I want to make note that he doesn't say it is a star. It is the star. So the star is the North Star. Right? Now, what do you know about the North Star? The North Star is the brightest. It's the most visible, right? It's the, all right, so let's say it's the brightest. And this kind of goes back, you may remember from Julius Caesar, there's a point where he says, I am as constant as the northern star. So by saying it is the star, he's saying that it's constant. All right, so whenever he says it is the star, and we're getting the North Star is the brightest, it's constant. Every wandering bark, a bark is a ship. So what is the North Star to ships out at sea? It's their guide. So again, we're getting that love is a guide. And I'm going to put a red box around guide. And I'm also going to put a red box around constant. Because what we're getting here is that it's a constant guide. And then we go back to the first metaphor. It is an ever fixed mark. And we said that that is a guide, right? And we said that it can go through any storm and never be destroyed. So what is Shakespeare trying to reveal to us from these metaphors? He's trying to say that love is a guide. Love should be constant. So here's a little lesson for you, real life lesson here. If love is a guide, what is it going to guide? It should guide your thoughts. It should guide your words. It should guide your actions. So if love is guiding those things, then you're not going to be hateful. You're not going to be harmful to someone that you love. So reverse that. If someone says they love you, but their words and their actions do not show you that love, then according to this, it's not true love. All right, so I've already given you a few notes here, but let me just talk about everything real quick. So this first part where he says that love is not times full. Notice that these things are capitalized. Love is at the beginning of the line, so that's not uncommon. But time is capitalized, and it usually wouldn't be. A lot of times that will tip you off that something is being personified. But what is he telling us through this personification? That time is not full. It cannot fool love. Love is not fooled by time. All right, then when he says rosy lips and cheeks, he's saying beauty. So time cannot fool love, even though beauty within his bending sickle's compass come. Now, the bending sickle, I'm going to try to draw this. The Grim Reaper, right? So there's my scythe, there's my bending sickle, my bending blade of the Grim Reaper. So when it says the bending sickle's compass come, that means whenever beauty is in death's reach, and he says that love alters, keyword not. So he says love does not change even though beauty comes within reach of death, but instead it bears it out even to the edge of doom, so forever. All right, and then let's look at the couplet at the end. All right, so we're going to look at the couplet, and this is where our shift comes in. And a shift is just where it can be a shift or a change in topic, but there's a shift in tone and what he's talking about. What he has done throughout this entire part, through these 12 lines, is he's told us what love is and is not, what love should and should not do. Now he's saying, if this be error, now what does error mean? Error means a mistake, wrong, and you can prove it. So he's saying, if I were to paraphrase the first line of the couplet, if you can prove me wrong, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. So he sets it up right here. I'm going to call it, that's a setup. He sets it up like he is going to admit that he could be wrong. But who is this writing? I never writ, nor no man ever loved. So what he's saying here is that if you can prove me wrong, I've never written anything and no man has ever loved. So he's basically saying it's impossible. It's impossible that I'm wrong about this. So everything that he said about love in this whole first part of the poem, he says is definitely right. So go back through everything that he said about love. It's a guide. It can go through any problems and never be destroyed. It's constant. It's not going to change with time. And then he's at the end. He says, "It's impossible for me to be wrong about this." So that's Sonnet 116. It's a Shakespearean sonnet, and we have broken it down, every little bit of it.